forcing a little self-reflection in these media companies for what they've been doing and the way they've been operating.
Free speech or not?
Yeah, of course I do.
Yeah, but it means you're saying we have to tie our hands and never fight back. All of us who've been attacked for
so let Jimmy Kimmel fight back.
So now it's about fighting back. Do you?
Yes, I think when he speaks out, when he says these people are bad and disgusting, and they're
not.
Former Republican governor of Wisconsin, Scott Walker, joined MAGA stooge Scott Jennings on Abby Phillip's CNN show to discuss the suspension of Jimmy Kimmel from ABC, freedom of speech, and what all of this means in Donald Trump's authoritarian America. Let's take a look together at these clips from Abby Phillip's CNN show with Scott Jennings, Scott Walker, and the rest. I'll share my thoughts on this as I do, and then I want to know what you think in the comments. Let's check it out.
People around
you
don't have a right to work for whoever you want to. You have a right to say what you want,
but you're
not
forgetting
to be
about the
employed
threat, which Abby's going to play.
The question here's the reason I want to play this, okay? Because I think we're willfully ignoring the threat, which was explicit. It wasn't implicit, it was explicit. Listen to what he actually said.
They have a license granted by us at the FCC, and that comes with it an obligation to operate in the public interest. And we can get into some ways that we've been trying to reinvigorate the public interest and some changes that we've seen. But frankly, when we see stuff like this, I mean, look, we can do this the easy way or the hard way. These companies can find ways to change conduct, to take action, frankly, on Kimmel, or, there's going to be additional work for the FCC ahead.
It'd be a shame what happens to your nice network. It'd be a shame what happens to your nice show. That's a threat.
Well, and not only that, but then Donald Trump took to Truth Social and then said further, that leaves Jimmy and Seth, two total losers on fake news NBC. Their ratings are also terrible. Do it, NBC. I mean, it will never end. But, just worth noting, just a couple years ago, back in 2019, Brandon Carr, he tweeted this on a different topic. Should the government censor speech it doesn't like? Of course not. The FCC does not have a roving mandate to police speech in the name of the public interest. And yet, he is doing exactly that today. Where does this end? Where does this end in your mind? You are fully comfortable with the government saying, if you don't do this, if you don't get this person off the air who said something that was wrong or that you did not like, we are going to drop the hammer on you.
No,
you're good with that?
No, I didn't like it when the Biden administration worked with big tech during COVID.
Then why are you defending it?
I'm not defending this. I'm saying right now, if ABC comes out and says we were forced to do this, we don't want to do this, I think this is part of a larger business decision on their part that goes back to what Scott said before about the affiliates.
So it sounds to me like what Scott Walker is saying there is, I am not defending it. I don't think it's happening. And that's not what's happening.
ABC.
This is a failing industry in terms of late night television.
I get it. Listen,
this is their excuse. This
linear
is their
television,
reason.
Failing industry. The whole world understands that. But Nexstar has a very clear financial interest in not getting on the wrong side of that guy whose clip we just played. Right? You don't see the problem with that?
And I think right now they're looking at the larger business circumstances, and they're hoping that people like you and others would point that direction instead of focusing on
you at least see an ethical consideration for Carr, a conflict of interest for Carr, some sense of his position as a government official to make that kind of threat?
Since when is the FCC an attack dog for any political party?
Well, it has been against Howard Stern. It has been against others in the past, which I also object to. There is a slice out of our First Amendment for broadcast, which I think is wrong. And it's based on wrong decisions years and years ago about precious airwaves and about going into the home and so on and so forth. If we believe in the First Amendment, we believe in the First Amendment.
George Carlin has a great bit from set he did in the 80s about the FCC and how there's this carve out in free speech for the airwaves, and he's like, the thing about a radio is there's two knobs on it, right? One of the knobs turns it off and the other knob changes the station. And he's saying what this guy is saying is that it's sort of absurd that somehow these sort of sacred airwaves are a place where you can't really have free speech because you're gonna, I guess, offend people.
And now we have this fascinating thing happening on the right where you have Ted Cruz defending hate speech because he doesn't want his speech taken off. And so where does free speech, is your question, Abby, where is free speech here then? Where is that line? How do we know where that line is now?
Well, I think it's similar to the debate we've had this week beyond just this topic to people who said horrific, awful things after the assassination of Charlie Kirk last week. Now, I think it's awful, but they have a right to say that. But I also think employers have a right to say, not just in this instance, but in so many others we documented, if you say something that's inconsistent with the principles of our organization, be it a college, a business, a nonprofit, we don't want you on
Do you
our
think
payroll.
Fox should take Brian Kilmeade off the air for what he said about homeless people?
I think in all those cases, they have a right to do that. Whether
Do you think they should? I'm asking for your judgment. You talked about a critic before, or you're a critic now. Do you think Fox should fire
I didn't say
Brian
that they had to take Jimmy Kimmel off. I said they have a right to. In each of these cases,
Do you think they should, Fox?
I'm telling you, they have a right to. That's what I'm talking about.
But you continue to talk about how it's a business decision, but the reality is that whether it is a threat, whether it is Donald Trump also threatening to go after organizations just because they have different views than him, he is threatening to go after the far left. All of these aren't business decisions. This is the federal government that is using their power in order to silence the media and people that disagree with them. And that is what is alarming.
So there was...
Yeah, she's right on the money here. Scott Walker is being completely disingenuous. You know, his argument is that a private business can fire someone over what they say, which is true. Free speech it protects you from like government. Like you can't be arrested for voicing your opinion about something. That's what free speech protects. If you are in the workplace and you say, my boss is a jackass, and make a big stink about that because that's your opinion, then your boss can fire you and he's not violating your free speech. So, I mean, Scott Walker's correct in that regard. But like with a lot of these talking heads that now have fallen in line and support this administration, there's this huge dotted absence in the shape of Donald Trump. Like they don't even want to say his name anymore. They just sort of act like he doesn't exist, or there's a point in this video where they're like, well, you know, I think it's okay for a president to express his opinion. Come on. That is not what is happening here. It's like they said in the beginning, hey, geez, it'd be a shame if something was to happen to your nice little business here. You know, say if he was to do something I don't like, you know, something bad could happen. It's a threat, and it's right out of The Godfather. I mean, this is just racketeering 101. It's just using the federal government to muscle companies and people to fall in line and not say things that are oppositional to them. And it's, you know, I think Scott Walker was a governor. I think he understands how to sort of sound reasonable. But it's just, they're just sort of pretending, like, what's the big deal?
There was some reporting tonight that Kimmel was going to address this on his show tonight, but rather than allow this company to handle this the way that maybe they saw fit, maybe he might have apologized. They decided to go this route. And I have to believe, I guess, because it's in part because Trump, you read one of the tweets, but here's what he said on August 6th after Colbert was taken off the air or his show was canceled. Here's what he said in terms of his order of operations here. Let's play the soundbite from Trump.
Fallon has no talent. Kimmel has no talent. They're next. They're going to be going. I hear they're going to be going. I don't know, but I would imagine because they'd get, you know, Colbert has better ratings than Kimmel or Fallon.
Okay, let's just take a moment and let's pretend that Donald Trump is not the president. Let's pretend that it's somebody else. And that person says, I don't like this person. I don't like that person. They're going to be gone next because I want them gone. I think the question that we have to ask ourselves in this moment is if you took the partisanship out of it right now, would you be comfortable with a president of the United States saying to any private corporation, television network, cable broadcast, that this is how they have to program their TV in terms of who is on and who is not?
I don't have a problem with the president expressing an opinion about people who express opinions about him. And regarding Kimmel, whether he was going to address it or not, I read that he was going to address it, but that he wasn't going to apologize, which I am sure was going to make Sinclair and Nexstar go crazy.
But what about Trump using the government to enforce it, because it's not just his words. He is also using the government to enforce his words.
Well, it is your opinion that they were threatening them. It is my opinion that they had a larger decision to make regarding their business interests.
Twice now. It is not my opinion that Brendan Carr said, you can either do this or I will do that. That's what he said. That's not my opinion. That's a fact.
Look, my view is all these companies have business decisions to make that are based on more than just what a singular person said in an interview. They've got affiliates to deal with. They've got advertisers to deal with. I promise
why
you
not let them deal
that
with
when
it?
Jimmy
Why
Kimmel
do you
does
have
what
to
he
bring
does,
the FCC into it.
Well, look, he gave an interview. I can't tell you that if I were the head of the FCC, I would have given that interview. It sounded a little over the top to me, but I still believe that what's going on here has more to do with their business than it does with the government.
President
then why won't you guys denounce it? That's the thing. Why won't you say what the FCC, what they did is wrong? I mean, I think that's the problem. It was a threat from the administration, and I understand the business dealing 100%. Just like the first ABC settlement, I truly believe that they were looking at it. It was a business deal. It was a business decision there, and that's why they moved forward with that. But when it comes to an actual threat from the federal government, that's wrong. It is wrong for our government to threaten these organizations when they have the power to approve mergers.
They didn't have to do this. They looked at all of the factors and said, okay, it's time for us to take Jimmy Kimmel off the air. I think there's more going on than just Brendan Carr's interview. All the time the president criticizes media outlets who then go out and continue to do what he hates it.
Then he sues them.
$15 billion.
What's going to happen? Nothing. What's going to happen?
This is an attempt to intimidate the New York Times. And you've heard me on this show. I'm not crazy about the New York Times coverage right now.
I mean,
but they're trying to intimidate them. The same thing with ABC. The same thing with CBS. This is the power of the government brought down on speech, on the press.
Maybe it's just the power of someone in the government forcing a little self-reflection in these media companies for what they've been doing and the way they've been operating.
Free speech or not?
Yeah, of course I do.
But it means you're saying we have to tie our hands and never fight back. All of us who've been attacked
so let Jimmy Kimmel fight back.
So now it's about fighting back. Do you?
Yes, I think when he speaks out, when he says these people are bad and disgusting and they're
not,
I totally agree with that. But I don't believe that means an elected official like myself or others can say, no, just go ahead and talk. I'm not going to push back on you. That's outrageous.
Do you understand that the threat of the president suing you for saying things that they don't like, and the threat of the government preventing you from conducting businesses?
Well, the reason the president wanted to pass when he was a candidate was because of actions that they took were contradictory to what they actually reported.
So when Elon Musk was spreading lies about, well, all kinds of things, but let's just put on the table the attack on Nancy Pelosi's husband. And he was spreading falsehoods about claiming that there was some kind of illicit relationship. Completely false stuff. If the government had dropped the hammer on Elon Musk, you would have been fine with that?
No, I'd say no.
Can't we be intellectually honest and apply the same principles across the board? Why do we have to create
because you're saying if the government did something, I'm saying they did. They made a decision today that they announced that.
It's amazing how you're acting, how Trump is powerless. He's just out there saying a few things.
No, I think he's extremely.
There it is from Scott Jennings. Just absolutely. So when we talk about sane washing, right? What we really mean, it's a play on brainwashing. Another term you hear is gaslighting. It's like, you're crazy. You try and convince the other person who has legitimate concerns that you're there in good faith and you're on the same page. But honey, you're crazy, and they're like, but I see the evidence right here. Sweetheart, you're being crazy right now. Like, that's gaslighting. So sane washing is a version of that where people like Scott Jennings and Scott Walker also, they come on shows like these and they downplay it. They downplay it with half-truths and outright lies and omission. Like, we'll just leave Donald Trump out of this. I don't have a problem with the president expressing an opinion about people who express opinions about him. Barack Obama expressed opinions. Okay? George H.W. Bush expressed opinions. George W. Bush. There has never been a president like Donald Trump before this. And what is happening both in the first term, but especially in this term when he doesn't have any checks and balances on him, he has completely stacked his cabinet and the government with his sycophants and his lickspittles and his yes people. That this it's the crypto coins, it's the protection racket, it's like every grift in the book. And he is using our federal government to do that, to muscle people. And to come on and say, I don't have a problem with the president of the United States expressing an opinion, that is so far from what Donald Trump does. That is so far afield that you have to be like, well, that seems a little disingenuous to me. It's not. It's a propaganda campaign. Scott Jennings is a propagandist, and I don't really know Scott Walker, but coming on the show and doing the same thing makes him a propagandist too. They look reasonable, and he knits his brow and he puts on a nice tie and he's like, well, Abby, he's playing the good faith. I have an opinion, but his opinion is from a different reality. A little bit of that you can attribute to, I'm in a different news bubble or whatever, but not when you're a talking head like this. Not when you're a talking head like this and it is your mission to go out and sane wash, make the crazy seem more sane on television and radio and your podcast. You're repeating. The speech that Stephen Miller, who is part of the Trump administration, and he looks a little bit like Gollum. The speech that he gave at the recent Charlie Kirk memorial service had such profound echoes of the language of Joseph Goebbels. And it's Goebbels. Look that up. He was part of the Third Reich he was Adolf Hitler's chief propagandist, chief, communications minister. And he literally wrote a book on how to do this. And Stephen Miller is like using that like a playbook. He's not even, it almost sounds like a Chat GPT remix of Joseph Goebbels. And, I think a lot of people don't even know what happened in World War II. Our education in this country has gotten so bad. And a lot of other people don't care. They just hear the buzzwords. But this is a campaign. That is, it's outright jihad on the Stephen Miller end of the spectrum. But it trickles down in these more conventional, calmer, sort of CNN forums, right? Where it's sane washing, where it's like, listen, everybody calm down. This is not as bad as a business decision. He's expressing an opinion. Relax. Shh. Everything's calm down. And if it makes you feel bonkers, it's because you have a sense intuitively that you're being lied to. You're being lied to. It's a propaganda campaign. And I have come to loathe Scott Jennings and his earnest face and his like, well, now, you people get awful excited. His like, aw shucks delivery just drives me up one wall and down the other. It's crazy making. I think Abby Phillip does a great job on this show. I mean, look at her face here in this freeze frame, looking at him. She's professional and she stays calm, but she sees it. She sees the deliberate disingenuity of it, the deliberate sane washing of it. Let me know what you think in the comments. I think that I don't know what else to do about it except talk about things like stochastic terrorism. Look that up. I've done it in other videos. This is a multifaceted, very deliberate campaign of moving the needle further and further to the right into authoritarianism and convincing us all to stay calm as it happens until it is too late to do anything about. And that's terrifying. And I hate it. I don't want that. I don't know what else to do about it, but come on here and keep saying it and keep pointing it out. Like I feel like this is just me screaming into the void. They're there. It's people. Soylent Green is people, but I don't know what else to do. Let me know. Let me know in the comments. Chime in here.